Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Location, determining site suitability for a library relocation, expansion, or new construction project presented by the Northeast Summit on Climate Adaptation for Library Facilities, or as we like to say, NESCAF, which is made up of state library agencies from Maine to Maryland. This webinar is being recorded. We will share it via email and post it on the NESCAF LibGuide. We will send also a link to that LibGuide as well in a follow-up email, along with the evaluation for this particular webinar. We kindly ask that all questions be put into the Q&A feature, which you should be able to find at the bottom of your screen. It might be under the More button at the bottom. After each presentation, we will open up Q&A for a few questions related to that presentation. If there's time at the end, we will get to as many questions as we can before 3:30, and our panelists have generously said that they will answer questions after that via email if we don't get to everything. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Metzger from Olis in Rhode Island to introduce our first panelist.
Thank you, Andrea. Anyone who has gone through the process of securing housing, whether it was a rental or a purchase, understands how complicated it can be. Among the checklist of characteristics folks typically have when searching for a home are aspects of the site itself. For example, is the property connected to municipal utilities? How much sun does the backyard get? Or what type of zoning does the street have? When it comes to assessing the suitability of a site for a public library, what else should be considered? It is my great pleasure to introduce architect Kristen Uitto, joining us to provide a general overview of how a site is assessed from an architect's perspective. Kristen is a principal architect at Caddis Collaborative, an architecture, urban design, and planning firm based in Boulder, Colorado. She is a LEED accredited professional and a certified passive house consultant. She is also a devoted library patron. Kristen, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for the introduction, Kelly. I'm happy to be here today to walk through how we evaluate sites, looking at zoning, climate risks, and passive environmental forces to set up a library project for long-term success. Let me share my screen. Okay. Great. Libraries are some of the most enduring civic buildings we design. They're expected to serve communities not just for decades, but often for generations. So what that means in today's context is that we're not just designing for current conditions, we're designing for a future that's likely hotter, wetter, and less predictable. From an architectural perspective, one of the most important things we can do is step back and recognize that resilience is not something we layer onto a building at the end of the design. It starts with where we put it. So as architects, we often focus on the building itself, but in reality, most of the risk is already determined before we even begin design. If the site floods, it overheats, or becomes inaccessible during extreme weather, there's no amount of good architecture that can fully solve that. Libraries are especially important because they often serve as community anchors, cooling centers, information hubs, gathering spaces. So when we think about climate adaptation, we have to think beyond materials and systems. We have to think about the fundamental question, is this the right place for this building to exist long term? So we work across the country in different jurisdictions and different climates. So we've developed kind of a checklist for ourselves to really evaluate a site based on a few different factors, like regulatory, what are we allowed to build? Environmental, like what are the risks, like flooding or wildfire? The physical nature of the site itself, slopes, what are the soils conditions? Climate, how does the sun and the wind interact with the site? And then infrastructure, like Kelly suggested, are you able to access utilities on a municipal level, or are there other opportunities there? So this framework really allows us to quickly identify fatal flaws, but it's also an opportunity that can improve performance and resilience. So zoning is often seen as a constraint, but we think of it more as a like defining what the envelope of possibility is. And zoning, it can is basically the bylaws or the guidelines for which to control development. The base zoning can tell us like what we can build, such as the use of the space. Is it civic? Is it residential? Is it mixed use? And libraries are generally located within like a public zone, but that varies depending on the jurisdiction. So it's really important to identify what the allowable uses are within the zone of that property. And while it's not always a deal breaker, changing the zone designation of a property requires a land use process, and that can be costly in terms of money and time. Other overlays are critical for climate adaptation, such as floodplains or coastal zones. That can really dramatically change how or whether you can build in that area. And then the typical things like setbacks, building heights, lot coverage, that really defines the building form before we even begin to design. So understanding the zoning early really can prevent wasted effort and helps align the project with both the regulatory and the environmental realities. So one of the primary drivers can often be flood. It's going to be continuous through our coming climate change. So it's a real big consideration. FEMA is often the regulatory agency that governs this, though there are variations depending on your jurisdiction, how they adopt the FEMA rules and codes. You can see this is a map of the Boulder downtown area. Our library is right here. So you can see that it's in a pretty critical zone. This pink is the high hazard zone. And so, again, an example of maybe things that have changed or evolved over time, maybe worsened. Um, so again, kind of a starting place to look. Like we can work with buildings in the floodplain by elevating them. It makes access a little more complicated, but is manageable. Um, Libraries are considered more of a higher risk category because they do want to stay open, to serve this primary function. So this is kind of a good place to consider if this is manageable or if you really should look for another site altogether. And this is an example of how we study a site on like a microclimate level. You can see there's a kind of a layering of information happening here, but we map the sun's path across the seasons, identify where the prevailing winds are coming from, which are these cool little diagrams over here. They tell you the strength of the wind and the direction of the wind. We also look at maybe there's primary views, topography, and this type of diagram isn't just analytical, it really directly informs the design decisions, where we place the buildings, where the entrances might be located, what might be the optimal outdoor spaces, glazing from windows, how do we control the heat, all come from this base understanding of a site. So it allows us to design with the environment instead of fighting against it. One of the biggest opportunities we look for is passive solar gain. This is where we can really harness the heat from the sun to warm us in the winter, but also how we can then protect from intense sun in the summertime. So we have some tools that we use, like this is a sun path diagram, which maps the sun's path through the sky and certain locations. This one, I'm not sure exactly. It's at 52 degrees north latitude, but you can see where the dates are at the key solstices and equinoxes. So it gives us a sense of like how we can design to maximize that sun. And again, also control it though, because while you want to create comfortable spaces and might be sunny, you also don't want to overheat or cause too much glare. In instance of libraries, that's pretty important. But some of the best spaces for reading and gathering areas can benefit from comfortable daylight spaces. And we use this to inform even building orientation, and that can actually play a part into long-term operational costs as well. So you can reduce your heating load or cooling load, depending on where you are, maintenance costs. And this is one of those windroses I was talking about. This is for Providence, actually. And I think it was a September date. So it kind of shows you what direction the wind is coming from and how intense it can be. So the layering of the color is correlated to the speed. And so this is north is up. So it tells you that Providence gets direct wind from all directions, but primarily the most from the south and from the southwest. Well, some of the time from the north too. But wind can often be overlooked. It has a major impact on comfort and energy use. Cold winter winds increase heat loss and make outdoor spaces less comfortable. But in contrast, summer breezes can provide a lot of natural cooling. So we use this to inform building placement, landscape elements, and how we might orient the building to block unwanted winds and capture the best cooling winds. Even something as simple as where you put the entry can make a big difference in the user experience. So then we kind of shift to looking at topography and how that can play a role in how water will move across the site. We want to be mindful about placing the buildings in any low points or drainage paths wherever possible. And at the same time, the slope can be used for daylighting, drainage, and views. Often there's other interest like forest or landscape or more vistas, so we want to kind of work with what is there. And as climate events intensify, stormwater is becoming more unpredictable. So we really want to design with the natural flow patterns and really use those as opportunities. So we're finding a lot of success in using bioswales and rain gardens that can be occupied. So in Colorado, we're a drier climate. So when we do have rain events, we need a place for that water to collect until it can be absorbed. And in the meantime, though, we don't want to have these drainage pits everywhere. So we've been landscaping those and finding that they're more useful as like an amenity space rather than just sort of a collection pond. Heat is becoming another major design factor, especially in public buildings that are in more of an urban condition. And since libraries often use outdoor spaces, these need to be usable in warmer conditions. So one of the best tools is really using our tree canopy or plant material to help reduce those heat island effects. They'll provide the shade but also create cooler microclimates around the building, which is really lovely for outdoor spaces to gather. We also build in architectural shading elements into the building design. That can vary, in terms of place and long-term maintenance and things like that. So it's kind of more site-specific for sure. If you are more in an urban environment, the building shading can be more effective if you aren't able to control how much tree coverage you have. The site planning for buildings can help with that as well, like I said, orientation, where we can cut off some of that summer sun to create a cooler interior environment is important. This will hopefully be a strategy that can help with climate adaptation and as the weather shifts to the future. And of course, there are no perfect sites. There's going to be trade-offs across everything. Like I said, Boulder Public Library is in the floodplain, but we were able to, I think, design it in a way that elevates it out of the risk area and creates safe access outside of that floodplain area. Um, so, one of our roles in evaluating the sites is to try to make those trade-offs visible and understandable so you can make an informed decision. Is really the goal isn't perfection, it's resilience and long-term performance. So I kind of want to leave you with some of these thoughts about climate responsive design, really starting with site selection, understanding the sun, the wind, the water, the regulatory context early allows you to make better decisions as you move forward. Avoiding risk is often more effective than trying to engineer around it. And ultimately, libraries deserve sites that will support them for decades into the future. I really like this library that's being constructed right now near kind of between Boulder and Denver and Thornton. It's by Anythink Nature Libraries, which have several sites across the country, but I really liked how they were approaching the overall composition of the library, how it was fitting into the site. You can see some really creative layouts and these opportunities for these outdoor spaces are pretty interesting, and the form itself is pretty inspiring, I think. Well, thank you. I'm happy to take some questions. Just leave you with the thought that the most sustainable building decision we make is where we choose to build sometimes.
Thank you so much, Kristen. This is really informative.
I have a tendency to go fast too, so if you want me to go back to any of the slides, let me know.
That's okay. Um, so if anyone has a question, you can enter it into the Q&A in the bottom of your screen. You should have that button. And if you enter it now and we don't get to it yet, we may have time at the end to come back around, I think.
Mhm.
All right. I'm not seeing any at the moment, but I don't want to go too fast. Mm, oh,
You can
maybe
also
we'll,
feel free to email me too. I'd be happy to follow up that way.
awesome. All right. Well, then I will look for questions there throughout the rest of the presentations, but thank you again, and we'll transition to our next speaker.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
All right. So next we will hear from our first library panelist. Lisa Sheley began her library career as the children's and young adult librarian at Jamestown Philomenian Library in Jamestown, Rhode Island. And she's been director at JPL for 5 years and shepherded the library through its recent construction and renovation project, which she will share with us today. Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Is that sharing?
We're seeing your email
You
zoomed
see my
in.
email?
There we go. We're seeing a slide zoomed in.
There we go. No. Guys, I thought I had this figured out.
It's all right.
Hold on. Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
All right. Oh boy. For librarians, we're supposed to be technically savvy. So I just wanted to go over Jamestown a little bit for you. We're in a unique spot in Rhode Island. We're an island town situated between Newport, Rhode Island, which is on Aquidneck Island, and the Rhode Island mainland. We're accessible only by two bridges. So one heads to the mainland, one heads to Newport. We're the home of a single stoplight and and the median age here is 58.2. The median household income is 140,000, and 35% of our residents have a graduate or advanced degree. So it's a very unique community here in Jamestown. Historically, the island was home to indigenous tribes for centuries before European settlement. There are artifacts here on the island that date back to 3000 BC. The town was officially incorporated in 1678, and it has a rich historical history here. One of the areas of note is that it was once had the largest percentage of enslaved people in New England, with slavery deeply integrated into its commerce and life from 1657 through the early 19th century. And that includes Native American slaves as well. So that's kind of the complicated history up until the 1800s for this town, but every town needs a library, right? So in 1828, the Philomenian Debating Society started a library. They organized the small library throughout the town. They had small libraries in different homes, but finally in 1828, the first library was in the Carr homestead. And you might be asking, what does Philomenian mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's a made-up word. The debating society came up with it. Philo is the Greek root, means love of, and no one really knows minion part of the word. So we do have a fancy name. We are a public library, or we're not a private library. Oftentimes people ask us that because of our fancy name. In 1874, the Library Association was officially formed. It was formed in the home of John Watson, and the libraries were generally in people's homes from 1898 to 1971. But in 1971, the former schoolhouse became the library. So from 1898 to 1971, the former schoolhouse, which is now the museum in Jamestown, the Historical Society Museum, was the site for the library. And then we had another location. So in 1971, a new library building was opened. It's the first time there was a actual building created to be a library. As Kristen said, what's the right place for a library to exist long term? This is what they deemed in 71 to be the best location in town. So the newly constructed building consisted of a single large room and a small museum, which was attached to it. A fun fact about Jamestown is that until 1969, all high schoolers went to school via ferry. So they took the ferry to Newport. So there was no high school here in Jamestown, and there still isn't. But to get to high school, they can actually take the bridges now and drive to school as opposed to taking the ferry. So the library opened in 1971, and then in 1972, there was a museum that was added. There's a history there. In the early 1930s, men working near Jamestown's West Ferry neighborhood, which is on the west side of the island, they unearthed human bones and artifacts, subsequently attributed to the Narragansett Indian tribe and their ancestors. To prevent the looting of the graves, the town bought the land and asked local part-time resident Catherine Kitwright to take charge of the materials that were recovered. After her husband's death, she donated the Sidney Wright Room to the Jamestown Philomenian Library to display the artifacts. So it was an addition to the 1971 library. And the museum was open from 1972 until 2022. Jamestown has an historical district. The district contains Native American graves dating to the Terminal Archaic, which is circa 1000 BC, and Woodland, which is circa 1000 periods, plus contact period, which is the official period with European contact. the library, the 1971 library, lies adjacent to that archaeological district. In 1990, the Public Archaeology Lab performed an archaeological reconnaissance survey in preparation for a renovation due to the proximity of the proposed renovation to this protected area at the request of the Rhode Island Historic Preservation Commission. The archaeological survey was proposed for the purposes of identification of land areas not disturbed by previous construction or land modification activities, locating and identifying any and all prehistoric and/or historic period cultural resources within the project area, and assessment of the potential impact of the construction upon any cultural resources in the project area. Of particular concern in particular sensitivity of the project area was the potential Narragansett burials. So tribal members were contacted, and in 1990, there were 2 tribal members present during subsurface testing. So the collaboration with the tribe and with PAL in 1990 enabled, they looked at the soils in the project area and they contrasted it with the soil in the local cemetery that's about 500 meters away. While the undisturbed soil was present in some of the test sites, the majority of the area was found to be disturbed previously. The extensive ground disturbance reduced the prehistoric archaeological site potential to low to non-existent. No prehistoric artifacts were recovered in the project area, and there was no evidence of Native American, i.e. Narragansett, burials. So conclusions and recommendations, and this is all part of what happens when you have an archaeological survey done, is that they come up with conclusions and recommendations on how to move forward. They concluded that the property had been extensively disturbed by land modifications, and that the potential for encountering Native American burials within the project area was extremely low. It should be noted that on the same land that the library exists, there had been farmland that was plowed throughout the 1800s. It was military housing for World War I. It was put up for only a few years and quickly taken down. It had a larger footprint for a school here that was in the 1930s, and then obviously the 1970 construction. So all of the ground had been plowed and disturbed for generations. So fundraising began for another renovation, which was completed in 1993. So with the archaeological survey completed and funds raised, the library underwent a major expansion in 1993, which tripled the size of the facility. A children's area, a staff area, a meeting hall, and a conference room were all added. And this was all in collaboration with the Public Archaeology Lab and with the Narragansett Indian tribe. So why keep renovating? Why do we keep adding? Why do we keep moving around? So increasing population size, like so many of us have. We are an island community, which is very popular with summer residents. So we have increasing summer visitors year after year. And then obviously within the early 90s, the rise in technology use and need for space for computers and peripherals, albeit back in the early 90s, it wasn't nearly what it is right now. And then also, it's still relevant right now, the expanded expectations of what a library does. It's a community center for all. We really wanted a youth space that combined education with entertainment, the edutainment factor, and more books published every year means more demand for varied titles. So, we're always having to add to our collection. So why not move buildings? We feel like we are in the perfect location. We're downtown, we're less than a half a mile from the schools, and we're next door to an extremely popular playground. The 1971 building was well built, and we just wanted to improve upon the library, not start fresh. A lot of what Kristen said in her presentation, I think, is applicable here, where we had really good bones for the building, and we just wanted to add on to it. And we also just really like our location. We're central to everything. So in 2024, a $5 million expansion was completed. It includes additions to the youth area to serve the young adult and preschool populations, and an addition for staffing. There was a complete overhaul of our mechanical, electrical, and HVAC systems. But how did we get there? So there was a lot of preparation, obviously, for renovation. A survey was completed in 2012, which set the data background for moving forward. Space reallocation committee was formed, which included trustees, friends, and the 3 librarians at the time. Over the next several years, several iterations of the space reallocation committee existed, all with the common goals of increasing youth size, creating more meeting spaces for library and patron groups and programs, and to install flexible spaces for changing technologies and challenging technologies. Between 2012 and 2019, there was progress and setbacks on the renovation to the building. An initial plan by our architect was vetoed by the town council as being too large and too costly. Not surprisingly, due to inflation and COVID, the larger expansion quoted in 2015 would have cost less than what we ended up paying in 2024. Also, trustee board members, renovation committee members, town council members, and staff all came and went during this stretch of 8 years. So for funding, during this period of waiting, the assumption was that the library would pay for the renovation by taking advantage of the construction reimbursement program in Rhode Island, which reimburses public library projects in the state up to 50%. If you want to know more, ask Kelly. Right, Kelly? Raising private funds. We have some very generous patrons on the island. We were going to and did apply for large grants through the Champlain Foundation, which is Rhode Island based, and the Van Buren Family Foundation, which is local in Newport. And then we assumed that we would have to go out to bid or to bond with the town. However, while we were going over our funding options, someone recommended that we apply for a National Endowment for the Humanities grant. It's the largest federal funder for the humanities that offers grants for museums, historic sites, universities, libraries, television, research, nonprofits, just so many different avenues that it funds. So with the support of our local resident, Jack Reed, who is a huge library advocate in the Senate, we completed the lengthy application in May of 2020 and were awarded a $350,000 federal grant in February of 2021. In March 2021, I became the director here. So unfortunately, we ended up declining the award, and this is why. There is a process called Section 106. It's in the National Historic Preservation Act, which was triggered with our acceptance of the National Endowment for the Humanities Award. Essentially, it requires federal agencies to take into account the effects of projects they carry out, license, or financially assist, which they call undertakings, on historic properties, and provide the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation a reasonable opportunity to comment on those undertakings. The National Historic Preservation Act, there's going to be a lot of acronyms in this presentation, also requires that in carrying out its responsibilities under the Section 106 review process, a federal agency must consult with any Indian tribe that attaches religious and cultural significance to historic properties that may be affected by the agency's undertakings. So what did this mean for us? We had wrongly assumed that we would not need another Section 106 review essentially another archaeological survey because the site had been farmland, a housing development, a school, a smaller library, a larger library. The ground, in our minds, had been thoroughly disturbed and had been proven not to contain any Native American or prehistoric artifacts. One of the acts that came into play was called NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which was enacted in 1990. It's a federal law that requires federal agencies and institutions receiving federal funding to return Native American human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony to lineal descendants, Indian tribes, and Native Hawaiian organizations. It governs ownership, control, and repatriation of these items, requiring museums to inventory collections and consult with tribes to facilitate return. So we did have Native American artifacts in our museum that was donated to the library in 1972. So the introduction of the Narragansett Indian tribe to the renovation process, that is the local tribe here in Rhode Island. Due to the fact that the library was awarded a federal grant, the National Endowment for the Humanities Award and the National Endowment for the Humanities reached out to the Narragansett tribe to let them know of the award in accordance with Section 106 mandates. The tribe did not see the issue as we did. We maintained that the ground had already been disturbed, as I mentioned before, and that the 1990 archaeological survey said as such. The Narragansett Indian Tribe Historic Preservation Officer stated that this area is a known cemetery and asserted that it's the tribe's right to object to our project. So at this time, along with the National Endowment for the Humanities, we reached out to the State of Rhode Island Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission for their feedback. Their SHPO, which is their State Historic Preservation Officer, who's also the executive director of the aforementioned Preservation and Commission, stated that his office had previously concluded that the proposed additions to the library would have no effect on archaeological resources or burial sites. So essentially, the SHPO and the NITPO, that's the Narragansett Indian Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, disagreed on the land that we sit on. The SHPO recommended that if we were to do any digging, that we should incorporate archaeological and tribal monitoring of the construction into our project scope with a clear understanding that the work should cease immediately if any potential burials or other features of concern were encountered. So during this time, the library wanted to complete another archaeological survey like in 1990, but unfortunately the tribe threatened legal action as they said that we would be disrupting Indian burial locations. We did end up having to hire a lawyer to advocate for the library and our right to excavate the areas in contention. The story was brought to the local NPR station, local newspaper. It was the talk of the town for a couple weeks at least. At this point, the cost of legal counsel and the potential extended delay, as well as the fact that our project wouldn't be considered for construction reimbursement, made this an obvious decision that we would need to withdraw our awarded grant from NEH. And as my slide says, in September of 2021, we'd reached out to the office that Kelly works for, and they notified us that until the issue with the tribe is resolved, we would not be able to have a successful application with the state for reimbursement funding, and rightly so. So we decided to formally decline the NEH award. However, despite our decision to decline the award, we decided to still hire the Public Archaeology Lab to do another archaeological survey of the area. We wanted to dispel any lingering concerns that the library was built on burial grounds. At this point, the interim SHPO reminded us that neither Section 106 nor the State Historic Preservation Act applied to our proposed expansion because we had declined federal funds. So it was no longer mandated, but we wanted to continue. The NITPO, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, was still concerned about the disturbance of burials. So after more meetings with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, the tribe's lawyer, and ours, we were able to come to an agreement in January 2022, which allowed the library to perform an art.
Hey, Lisa. Oh, I think she's frozen. Oh, Andrea,
I wonder if I did not
you didn't do it. Okay, so she
know.
must have. All right.
Or just lost
But
connection.
I'm wondering while we're waiting for that, there are two questions in the chat
Yes.
for Kristen. Um, so the first was Kristen talked about understanding the zoning being step one. Who would help you assess and understand that? Would it be your architect? Are there common pitfalls to avoid? Like, are there key questions you should be asking or red flags to look out for that might signal you have more research to do?
Yeah, those are great questions. And generally, yeah, the architects tend to be able to find the, understand the guidelines and work with planning development service agency a little easier sometimes than just a property owner can. We find that real estate agents are like, sort of they get the high level, but then when it gets to these more complex issues, it can cause some confusion. Yeah, I think the things to really um, pay attention to would be, like I said, the permitted use. Those would be whether it's classified as public building or a library. Sometimes can like in residential zones aren't usually allowed or complementary. Some jurisdictions have more of a mixed use approach to some of those zones that you might be looking at, but that would be something to pay attention to. The services, access to services around the property. If sometimes there might be city water, municipal sewer and water, but the capacity might be more limited. So sometimes that's something to pay attention to because the library needs might have more electrical components or more plumbing than what are already serviced at that site. Um, so those kind of came to top of mind as the maybe the first things to be thinking about. Um, Size capacity of the property in terms of how much allowable floor area you can build can sometimes limit. There's not usually a way to expand beyond the limits already defined in that zone. And that could be prohibitive for some libraries who need a certain amount of space that property just isn't allowed. Um, Sometimes there are, one thing I forgot to mention too is that sometimes there are already approval processes in place that have created a planned unit development, PUD, or some other overlaying regulations in place for those properties. So sometimes those aren't apparent right away until you start to dig into that property more. That might have already stipulated your expansion potential or varied the setbacks or the height limit different than the overlying zone would have. So that can sometimes lead to more opportunity or restrict you more.
Thank you. And there's
Yeah,
one
you're
more
welcome.
question for you. So Kristen mentioned landscaping drainage is landscaping drainage in as an amenity space. I was hoping she could talk more about those amenity spaces. Are they just pretty to look at, or is there a way to have a functional space that also acts as drainage in some way?
Yeah, that's great. I will try to pull up some pictures to give you a better sense of what we're talking about, but definitely more than just pretty to look at. They can function as just open space for kids to play. We have a space in a park right near our office that is technically the drainage detention pond, but it's sloped in a way and it's landscaped and it's green, so the kids they sled ride down it in the winter, like they run, roll down it in the good months. And then we also do outdoor movies there, and they put the screen up at the one end, and then we all lay on the hillside and watch the movies. So it can be just like useful outdoor space as well as being, either grass or have flower beds and trees. Um, and then we have some other examples too, where like the bioswales could be like rocked and have native plants in it. And so it can function as moving the water around the building in a controlled way, but then also provide that kind of natural beauty. So that one's more of the beauty side of it, but also super functional for drainage. Whereas the other example is really like more for like occupying that space in a different way.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
That was perfect because I just see Lisa popping back in. So
Great.
thank you for answering those questions.
Sure.
Hi, sorry about that. We lost power for 2 minutes.
That's okay.
Yay, new building.
Right.
So let me try sharing again.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me just go in.
If anybody needs evidence of what we do see and learn the construction team all the time, which is that a new building is still not a perfect building.
No. Okay. Let me see.
Right. There you go.
Okay. All right. I think I'm where I was.
Yeah,
So, right?
I think you're in the next slide when you just started talking about like you were able to get started with the next survey.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. So we had the agreement with the tribe, and we were able to get the public archaeology lab on site in late January of 2022. It was very cold. That was fun, being outside for 8 hours, 2 days in a row, where it was, I think, 5 degrees out. So my phone kept dying, but thankfully we have battery packs, so I was able to recharge it. So with this consultation and coordination with PAL, part of what we did was all the tasks with PAL were coordinated with me. We submitted a scope of services and archaeological permit application to the Rhode Island Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission, and they had 30 days to review that. They did get back to us very quickly. And the scope of the work was provided to the Narragansett tribe, as well as the impending survey, field work schedule, and an invitation to participate in the field work. A shout out to our Department of Public Works here in Jamestown, who helped me tremendously with this process. They helped cordon off the areas that were going to be excavated, and we moved forward. So the project personnel for PAL were a principal investigator and a project archaeologist. The Historic Commission's files were reviewed for updated information on known archaeological sites and historic properties near the property. They wanted to make sure that nothing had popped up in the 30 years since the last survey. Of course, that would be really hard because how could something historical pop up in that time period? But they looked through published and non-published archaeological reports of the area. They did archival research, which included town histories, historic maps, aerial photographs, environmental data. And then they also did property research, which was a review of the local geography, ecology, the soils, histories, maps, all different kinds of radar detection and aerial photographs. So the packet that I got before we actually did any digging was really interesting to look through. The next part of it was the PAL field investigations. The town of Jamestown, DPW again, provided a backhoe and excavator with a blade scraping edge, as well as a toothless grading bucket with a trained operator. The fills and the topsoils were systematically removed. It was usually 3 inches at a time, at which time PAL staff cleaned the subsoil surface with flat shovels and masonry trowels in order to inspect for archaeological features. Any exposed features were to be inventoried, drawn in the plan, photographed, and mapped using GPS. And photographs were taken of the area's cultural features and of the machine field work. So these are all the things that we hired PAL to do. The contract further stated that potentially significant archaeological features would be bisected to provide information on content and profile. The excavated soils would be screened through hardware cloth, and any recovered cultural materials would be bagged and labeled with provenance information. So exactly where it came from, the depth of the soil, what was surrounding it. The contract stated further that if any human skeletal materials, remains, or possible ceremonial archaeological materials were encountered during the hand excavation, continued work at the site would immediately be suspended. The human remains protocol statement is just kind of what I said. If remains are located, PAL will assist with the Narragansett Indian Tribe Historic Preservation Officer with notifying the Historic Commission, the town of Jamestown building inspector, and local law enforcement in accordance with a local Jamestown code, but your town also would have this code as well. No human skeletal remains, mortuary artifacts, or ceremonial artifacts encountered during the archaeological survey will be collected or removed from the site. Ceremonial materials will be photographed for the NIPO's records and reburied within the feature. And that's not future, it's feature, because if anything were to be found here, it would be reburied in the same site. And that would probably apply for any materials found in your area if they're local Native American tribes. Reburial is very important to them. There was also a processing and analysis. So all recovered cultural materials were to be transported to the lab facility in Pawtucket. Activities would have included cleaning, identification, and cataloging of the materials. They were to be cataloged in the relational database system to say, something had been found in this site relationally to this site, so that they can draw a greater map for the future. Following the lab processing and cataloging, all cultural materials were to be stored in acid-free boxes and curated in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards. And at the conclusion of the project, a permanent repository was to be designated. So it would be, the artifacts would go to PAL for them to assess, but then the permanent repository would have been on site. And at the end of the whole process, you get a work product. That's what they call it. They prepare a report that describes the methodology. They summarize the results of the investigations, and they offer recommendations based on results. The copies of this report would then be submitted to the library, the tribe, and the Historic Commission within 2 weeks of the completion of the field work. It was expected to take 3 days. It actually took us 2 days here on site. So in 2022, this is PAL, the left-hand slide, our image is PAL at the south excavation. We had excavations on the south side and the north side of our building, one on the south side for one addition there and two on our north side. So you can see the gentleman in the pit doing the south excavation, and that's after several hours of just scraping the soil. The historic preservation officers in the middle slide also overseeing. And then that same day, that's PAL at the north excavation. So the reason why we didn't do 3 days worth, it was only 2, is because our condenser units that we had at the time were sitting on the site that was going to be a future addition. And they had been sitting on a slab, and knowing that the addition was going to have to have some sort of structural integrity to it, and it would have to have some stanchions on the bottom, we knew that we were going to need to dig. So we did agree with the tribe that they would be able to come back at the time that we were ready for the condensers to be demolished, that they would come back at that time. So these are some photos that I took during the excavation. And then these were photos as part of the field investigation. So these are photos that PAL took. So the first photo on the upper left was the existing conditions, and then the north existing conditions is right below it. The middle sides, the top, there was a buried PVC drainage pipe that was exposed within the north addition footprint. To us, that meant, well, if there's PVC piping there, again, it's obvious that it had already been disturbed. And the bottom was a picture of the north addition subsoils, which, if you know anything about soil, which I did not, and I still feel like I don't know that much about soil, but that shows that it has been disturbed. And then on the right-hand side are the 2 artifacts that were actually found, one artifact that was found, a stone pestle recovered from the fill soils within the South Addition footprint. It was a suspected Native American pestle. So at the end, PAL, or your archaeological consultant, will give you a technical memorandum. So basically what they said was a suspected stone pestle and a suspected secondary quartz flake were recovered from disturbed contexts within the work areas, which confirms that the library is on former Narragansett Indian lands, and that intact archaeological deposits are potentially present in undisturbed areas nearby. The survey confirmed that most of the proposed Jamestown Philomenian Library's addition footprints have been disturbed by previous school and library construction and lack integrity. No cultural features were identified in any of these soils. It went on to state that PAL and the historic preservation officer examined 100% of the South Addition, and that the South Addition should proceed as planned. And due to the fact that the condensers were still in the way on the north side, that they should come back, that the tribe and PAL should come back in the future. So the technical memorandum said, in no uncertain terms, the library should be able to continue with at least the South Addition. So after those 2 days on site, we're very excited to have the tribe's findings, which were, we find the Jamestown Philomenian Library Edition is complying with Section 106 with the protection and preservation of historic properties located at 26 North Road. They agreed with PAL's findings, stating that since it was impractical to remove the shrubs and the condensers, they'd come back at a different time. This was very good news to us, obviously, meaning that we could move forward It was not a surprise to us, as I think stated a couple times, that we were fairly certain that with all of the disturbance of the grounds prior, that this would be the outcome. So moving forward with the professional opinion of PAL and the concurrence of NIPO, we forwarded the findings to the Historic Preservation Office and the Office of Library and Information Services in order to get our construction plans in motion after almost a year-long delay. We were able to continue our fundraising efforts and focus on the minutiae of impending construction projects. We signed with a contractor in October of 2022 and moved out of our building in November of 2022. We spent 16 months at an offsite location as a full service library while construction continued. And in March 2023, when it was time for the condensers to be demolished and the staff addition to be started on the north side of the building, we worked again with PAL and the NITPO, and no archaeological items were found. And JPL reopened to the public in February of 2024. So that was kind of a dramatic process that we went through. So lessons learned: do not make assumptions about your building or land. Be open and transparent in all of your dealings with stakeholders, whether they be your patrons, potential donors, or involved parties. Try to explain the process to those who are interested without allowing it to become political. That was something that we really had to focus on. Be ready for a long process that may not end how you hope. So be ready to pivot if necessary. We were prepared to go back to our architect and ask him to come up with a completely different plan where we would add on a second floor to our building as opposed to bumping out, and try to view this as an adventure as you're attempting to create something new and better for your community. So always have a contingency plan. We're very happy that we didn't need to, but we were prepared to. So thanks so much for having me here today. This is my contact information, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Lisa. We do have one question that was submitted that I think you can address pretty quickly. For the second archaeological survey and the coordinating work that ensued, how were you able to fund those efforts?
So we actually funded it through our board of trustees. Our trustees did pay for that in advance with the thought that they might be reimbursed once we raised more funds, and we knew that our project was moving forward. But I do believe that ended up being a straight out donation from the trustee account.
Got it. Thank you. And thank you so much for taking us through that whole process. I know it was hard to live through.
Well, as I said, if anyone has any particular questions, my information, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to move to our last panel, which not least, but last, for the Johnson Public Library in Vermont. And we have three panelists with us today. Adrienne Parker serves on the Johnson Select Board and is actively involved in the Johnson Beautification Committee and the Johnson Community Oven Group, now under Johnson Eats. She has a background in design and project management, which she brings to her civic work, advocating for recreation planning, economic development, and community involvement. Adrienne is passionate about building durable, sustainable, volunteer-friendly systems that help small towns thrive. We also have Peter Hammond, who serves as a member of the Johnson Select Board, Conservation Commission, and Johnson's Volunteer Fire Department. He believes that public libraries, like public schools, are essential pillars of democracy and community. Doris Lessing has, he feels, stated it well when she wrote, "A public library is the most democratic thing in the world. What can be found there has undone dictators and tyrants." Right on. And then last but not least, we have Jasmine Yuris, and she is a mother of three, Johnson Public Library trustee vice chair, and the co-chair of the Johnson Eats Committee. She is especially passionate about free food, free books, free workshops, and equity that looks a lot like robust community building. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. Like like Andrea mentioned, both Adrienne and Peter are on the Johnson Select Board, and I am on the Johnson Public Library Trustees. Adrienne and Peter are here to kind of be the tandem storytellers along with me. They wear different lenses, and so I think that all of our views of what we've been through at JPL, ironically, we had the other JPL, uh, their insight is invaluable. So thank you guys for being here with me. And also, I'm breaking the stigma. I am not techie, even though I am very passionate about libraries. So Adrienne is going to share her screen for me, and I will kind of narrate as we go through the presentation. So if you hear me give cues to Adrienne, that's just us, working together. So Johnson, we are in northern Vermont. Oh, here we go. It's looking a little fuzzy. We're located in northern Vermont. We're a small town, but we are surrounded by even smaller towns. And so we serve a pretty wide community. We were located on School Street, which was in the village. This is a picture here of our village after the July 2023 flooding. So because of this incident and other incidents of flooding, we decided to move out of the floodplain. We do have a video to show you. Hopefully we have enough time, but I'd like to share it because our friend made it for us, and I think that it kind of encapsulates a lot of what we're wanting to share really beautifully. So we'll share it now, and then I'll talk more after it.
Did the small town of Johnson, Vermont, actually move its beloved library out of 100 years of harm's way? Over $1.5 million raised, months of planning, municipal and state governments all working together, all in position at the starting line. The night was perfect, unseasonably warm for April. Up and down the line, everyone working together. 3 hours later, they had traveled only 30 feet. This wasn't how it was supposed to end, not with a flat tire, stuck in the mud. The beautiful historic library in Johnson, Vermont, grounded far from its intended new home. Over a century ago, 2 rivers brought prosperity in water-powered mills to Johnson. Today, the mills are long gone, but the same rivers now threaten some of the town's existence. In the early 1900s, before they even had the right to vote, a group of local women founded the Oriag Club. Their mission: mental improvement, social union, and organized effort toward encouraging a more generous public spirit in the community. In 1909, they built what we know today as Johnson's Public Library. Here on Railroad Street, near the Guyon River, a Carnegie-style, simple, elegant brick building. Everyone dreams of living in a great place where people know their neighbors, walk safely at night, and run toward disaster to help, not away. Johnson is that community. In today's America, what is the value of preserving a community gathering place? For generations, the library was Johnson's beating heart, a community center, cultural hub, promoting health and wellness initiatives, civic engagement, and of course, books for all ages. At the same time, flood after flood tore Johnson apart. 1927, 95, 96, 2011, 18, 19, 23, and 2024. 3 floods in 1 year alone. Each time, librarians, trustees, community members, sandbagging, pumping, cleaning, hoping. It was clear something had to change. In 2024, Library Director Jean Engel learned about the possibility of grants to modernize Vermont's libraries. But with a near impossible deadline of 2 weeks, daunting for any municipality. The town administrator, Tom Gallinat, and the local library committee quickly pulled together an application. One shot, 2 weeks to apply. A long shot that paid off. Late last year, they learned that they had received a $1.68 million grant to transplant and modernize this historic building, to move it forever outside of the floodplain to the higher ground of Johnson's Legion Field and modernize it as a 21st century true digital community hub. To move the massive structure down the main streets, shortly before midnight, the utility company shut power through the town. Downtown remained as bright as day, powered by banks of emergency floodlights. In its original home on Railroad Street, the library seemed small. Diesel-powered hydraulics, 6 dollies, and 48 massive wheels creaked into action. The library inched forward. Its 40 by 45-foot frame now seemed huge, brushing against buildings, bridges, and poles. At 3 miles per hour, the library made history. Then the rain started. Throughout the day, rain didn't stop. Neither did the people. The building movers, utility crews, volunteers, firefighters, road workers. Route 15 shut down. 28 bucket trucks. All power and utility lines moved and moved again. A few trees cut down, lampposts and road signs removed. The building movers said in 22 years it was the tightest job they had ever tackled. All to give this building a safe new home. More importantly, to give this community hope. We are taking a new approach to flood mitigation and are looking to the future. We are not just jacking up and rolling the physical building down the street. We are creating a new heart of Johnson, free from the risk of flooding. In the face of climate change and all we've lost, we are reimagining a new Johnson. A place to honor the past and a gathering place to point us to our future. This is a message for Johnson, for Vermont, for all of America.
We're in the thick of fundraising right now for the addition of the library, and I feel like all I need to do is watch that movie, and I'm okay. I'm reminded that this is like something that is really, really powerful, and so it's really nice to watch it with you all. Thanks for letting us share it. So the Johnson Public Library, this is the footprint of the original library. It was built in 1909 by the Oread Club, which was a group of women. The land that it was on was donated to these women. It was on Library Street off of Railroad Street within the heart of the village. The village itself is right near the convergence of two major rivers, which were great when it was a mill town, and not so great now because of recurring flooding. So, Adrienne, if you want to change. So, because of this recurring flooding, we originally just began kind of flood mitigation within the site itself. We put the hot water heater up on the roof of the basement. We put the furnace on the roof of the basement. We looked into getting different windows for the basement that wouldn't shatter under the pressure of water. Most of our trustee meetings were about flood mitigation. I've been on the board for 10 years, and that is the bulk of what we would be talking about, was how can we make this building stronger to flooding. And so we also, with that site and with that footprint, we have really, really great children's programming and adult programming, but we would constantly be at odds with limited space. It's basically one big room. So we would have to get creative about when we would have programming, and a lot of our children's programming was actually held in our basement when it was on Railroad Street, which isn't the nicest environment, but we made do. We also, fun note, the stairs that go down to the basement you had to access through our one and only bathroom. So, if you were a local, you knew the rules, but if you weren't visiting, you didn't know, you might walk into somebody. So it was a very quirky layout. We made it work. We had really great programming, but these were constantly conversations that we were having, and we were up against having a very small footprint of land. And so we had conversations of what would it look like if we went out 5 feet and went over the parking lot out back and had the addition on pillars, and there was parking under the pillars. And these conversations all felt very dead end because it would only buy us so much more space, and we were still dealing with flooding. And so we were reacting in real time, but also had all of these other things at play. So after the 2023 flood, this is another picture of that day. I canoed out from Main Street to the library, thinking that I was going to go and check on the library, but it was above the door, so I couldn't go in. But after this flood, we kind of got to a point of like, okay, something's got to give. What are our options? We either bring the building up, which we learned we would have to bring it up 12 feet to get it out of the floodplain. And you can kind of see the residential buildings nearby. It would do an injustice to Railroad Street. It's all residential. It would be an eyesore. It would still not address our space issue for programming. And it would have been incredibly expensive. So we kind of moved on to, we either build a new library outside of the floodplain, or we move this old library and put an addition on it. And we learned about the ARPA grant in 2024 through the Vermont Department of Libraries. There was $16 million allocated for the Vermont Department of Libraries, and we, the library trustees, got select board approval to apply for this thing. And we kind of divided and conquered because we had a really, really short amount of time to apply. So it looked a lot like taking up an entire table with the town administrator, the library director, locals who were willing to help. It was definitely a grassroots effort, and everybody kind of taking a piece. And we sent it in, and we received the $1.68 million to get the library moved and also put on an addition. The move itself was and it still feels so raw. It still feels like I just ripped the Band-Aid off. But what I can say is that it was really the leadership, as like there was no real project manager, so to speak, for that move. We had a town administrator at the time who was kind of leading the charge, which was fantastic. And he had such great energy and helped make it happen. But we were all so green to this process that it felt that for months we were kind of up against challenges every step that we took. Moving a library, the half mile that we needed to move it through a downtown across a major state highway was the biggest challenge. We're talking like telephone lines, Comcast, Fidium, Vermont Electric Co-op, the Village Electric. We needed to contact tons of utility people. They all needed to collaborate on this. So those were things that I feel like I'm a dead record, or not a dead record. I'm like a broken record when I say that after like every little road bump, I'm like, this wasn't in my library board of trustees job description. But we we figured it all out. We got the land that it is now on. You can see in this picture, it's in its home. That was the morning after the move. We moved it through the middle of the night, as you saw in the movie. The land that it is on was sold to us for $1 from Lamoille North Supervisory Union, the school district. The elementary school is right beyond the library. So the play yard is right beyond, which that connection was an easy pitch to make to them. We're still in downtown. The walkability was huge. We're out of the 500-year floodplain. It checked all the boxes. School Street is it's a really wide street. People drive slow on it already. So it was kind of a no-brainer as far as site choice. Yeah, I think that's everything for that slide.
These are just some photos.
Yeah. Yeah, and Adrienne and Peter, if you guys have anything to add go along, feel free to interject.
This was like right before it was moved, so they had to they had to like kind of make a fake faux foundation so that they could like slide it onto their system for moving it. And we pretty much like kind of advertised this event like as our moving day, and made it into a celebration. And when with the library move, that everyone kind of like became like a volunteer that night into the day, where we all had hard hats on and like high visibility vests on, and we kind of transformed into a different role. Like usually we're just like either like on the beautification committee or we're some volunteer in some other respect. But on that night we were kind of like construction workers, area control people. So it was funny sightseeing us all in construction gear. And yeah, this is just that night when they were sliding it onto the wheels to move it. And this is the corner of Railroad Street and Main Street. So the street that it was originally on, and then the busiest street that it would need to go on to get to its new location.
We also had to take out a few lights. What are they called? Street lights.
Power lines?
Yeah. Well, no, not the power lines. These street lights. We had to take out a few on the bridge. What are they
Oh,
called?
yeah.
Yeah, the street lights. Yeah, it was just so tight, like it mentioned in the movie.
So
There was just-
the library actually had to be high enough to clear the walls on the bridge. because
Mhm.
the library was wider than the bridge. So
Mhm.
it was,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
there's a video
there you
of
have it.
it.
This was actually like probably like a 10-minute process, but it tried to speed it up to show how amazing it was. But yeah,
Mhm.
there was like lights on the side of the bridge that had to be removed.
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like a question that came up both locally and regionally was why not just build new? But I think that being a library, we're all about preservation and preserving what what demands to be preserved, what is honorable, and what, we
Mhm.
this building served us so well, and those women who built this space didn't know that the river was going to work against them in 100 years. And so we wanted to do right by our history. Um, and I just think that it brought our community closer together and had more buy-in from locals because of it. Because we took it seriously. We took preserving that building seriously. If we left it and built new, who's to say that what the future of that building would be? And that would just be another building that the town would have to maintain. So we wanted it to stay our library, and that's what we did. This is kind of a rendering of what the library will look like now. So to the left is the original building, and you'll enter through the side here. And the addition is probably more than doubling our original space. So the collection will be in the addition, and the front will actually be a community space with an activity room that will have a full kitchen. And so the idea when you walk in these side doors, there's going to be access to the stacks, and then down a hallway there will be access to the community room. We will be able to close off the collection at night, and groups can meet and have potlucks and genealogy workshops and what have you in the front room, and it will just be a space for our town, and for programming. So that's the idea for the layout. And here's where it's at. It's very much still a work site. We're hoping that it's done by late fall. That's when we need to spend the ARPA funds. There is a gap in funding, as you know, this is a tale as old as time. Um, Inflation, rising costs, all of it. We have a bit of a gap, but we're going to fill it. We have filled some of it. So we are determined and hopeful. And yeah, we're going to be able to offer so much more, both physically and through through programming and through the collection. And yeah, you can't I don't even know if I can really see the forest through the trees yet. And I think I'll continue to be surprised when we're in that space and we realize the capacity that we'll have. Thank you so much for having us. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. And, I think all of these stories show how there is this common thread when you're thinking about the site of respecting the land, respecting the people who live on that land, and doing what's right for people and nature. So thank you so much for presenting this. And to all of our presenters today, I see one Q&A here. It said, is the video on YouTube? It's really so wonderful. I cried through the whole thing. Thank you so much for sharing. I got teary too. It was so good.
It's
Um,
actually on our
it,
website.
yeah, if you go to our website, it's there. It's posted on Vermont Public's website. It's called Making History. So I think it'll be easy to find, especially if you just visit our website.
Beautiful. Thank you. And you're getting kudos. It says, talk about a Herculean task. Kudos to you,
Oh.
Johnson, Vermont.
Oh, thanks.
So we're so thankful for all of you being here today. It is 3:30, and so it wrapped up just organically at the time that we had said. So thank you. We will be sharing this recording via email, and again, we'll be posting it to our LibGuide. We will be sending out an evaluation for our programming, and look for more NESCAF webinars next year. This is the last one for this year, this season, but we plan on having more next season, and we hope you'll join us for it. And thank you so much for presenting. And I'm seeing one that says give website for, oh, now it's gone.
They wanted
Heather?
to know where to find the recording.
I assume they were asking.
Okay,
where
thank
to
you so
find it.
much. Okay, thank you.
Oh, the video.
Yes,
Okay.
I just put in the library's website
Excellent.
for that. So if you scroll down, it's there.
Great.
Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
This was
Actually,
really
can I
wonderful.
just say there's also a phenomenal video. I think it was Vermont TV that did it about which is the first time I became aware of it. And also just, I mean, tears. It's so incredible. If people are looking for more, I think it's on YouTube.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to everybody who joined us today on this lovely, well, at least here, 80-degree day in Colorado. Apparently it's snowing, so not so nice there. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.